Hey everybody, Danny Davis here with the Austin American-Statesman. It's Longhorn Confidential time. I'm joined by Cedric Golden, Thomas Jones, our guy David Eckert. He's enjoying some much needed PTO. This is the time of the year. December hits. We got to burn through that PTO because doesn't look like we're going to be playing covering many playoff games this month. So we're going to have a little chance to get some time off.
PTO means playoff time.
Not for the Texas Longhorns, but we're gonna chat a little bit about that today. We're recording this on Wednesday morning. On Tuesday night, the College Football Playoff Committee released its second to last rankings. The last rankings come out on Sunday, but probably not going to be a lot of movement, which means Texas, which came in at 13th, up 3 spots from number 16, doesn't have a lot of avenues to get to number 10, which is about what they're going to need to be because of the whole at-large bids, automatic qualifiers from some conferences, et cetera, et cetera. In the lead up to those rankings being released, Steve Sarkisian was on pretty much every show and podcast except for ours, talking to anyone who would listen about why he thinks Texas is a playoff team. Kind of gave us a preview of his spiel after the Texas A&M game, 3 top 10 wins, playing in the SEC. Don't hold the Florida loss against us. If you want marquee matchups, don't punish us for the Ohio State game. Those are the talking points, but does not appear that the committee was listening. So at 9-3, we're just going to kind of make this simple. Said, is Texas being held out of the playoff because of the Ohio State loss, because of the Florida loss, or because of the Georgia loss, or just because of the committee being spiteful? Why is Texas not going to the playoff?
Because they didn't show up in Gainesville, Daniel. Simple as that. You can't be 9-3 with a Florida loss and expect to get in. Those were your chips. You lost your chips when they didn't show in Gainesville. And so the committee chairman, Hunter Yurchek, who's the AD at Arkansas, said as much. It's not Ohio State holding Texas back. It's the Florida loss. And if Texas is 10-2 with 10-2 Vanderbilt and other 10-2 teams, Texas gets the nod because of its resume with a 10-2 record. But that 9-3 record is going to keep them out of it. Those 3 top 10 wins are not going to be enough to qualify them because it's 9-3. And they talk about strength of schedule, but they're talking about it in the context of, okay, if you have a good strength of schedule and you're 10-2 with a bunch of other 10-2 teams, you don't get the nod. 9-3 is not getting them the nod. It's Florida. It's Florida. Simple as that. That's why they're out.
TJ, do you agree with that, or do you agree with some of the players who were, this Longhorns and Steve, who were intimating that they're being punished for scheduling Ohio State early, and that's maybe why they change their mind on scheduling in the future? You're on mute. We're 5 years into this Zoom experience, and we're still fumbling.
Yeah, that little red. When there's a little red thing at the bottom of the screen, that means people can't hear you, TJ. Welcome to 2025.
Okay, I'll talk. It's 3 losses, and it doesn't matter if it's at Ohio State, at Georgia, at Florida. If Texas had beaten Florida and say they lose to Texas A&M, they'd still be out because people see those 3 losses. I mean, it's simple as that. And all the talk about strength of schedule, if the committee values strength of schedule, that's all. It's a load of manure. No. It's just talk. It's not true. If you end with 3 losses, it doesn't matter really who you've lost to or who you've beaten. Chances are you're not going to be in the CFP. And yeah, Florida is the one they probably shouldn't have lost, but they lost 3. That's it. It doesn't matter if they lost it in Ohio or Georgia or wherever. Don't lose 3.
An argument that they are not in because of the Georgia loss. They were still ranked 10th and considered a playoff team with the Florida loss before the Georgia game. But then they went to Georgia, got their doors kicked in that 4th quarter, and they dropped 7 spots in the poll. And that's my key thing, is they dropped 7 spots with only 2 weeks to make it up. And they climbed 2 spots after the Arkansas win. They climbed 3 spots after beating the undefeated A&M team. And I think the Georgia loss just left them with too much room to make up in a short period of time. If they had gone to Georgia and lost by 3 or had been a close game, and they hadn't plummeted 7 spots, I think maybe they could have made it up with the way that they closed up the season. But the fact that they dropped those 7 spots, the teams ahead of them did not really lose. There wasn't a lot of slippage in front of them. It was just too much, I think, for them to make up over 2 weeks. And I think they are going to think long and hard about that onside kick. I think they're going to think long and hard about Colin Simmons being offsides on 4th and 5. They're going to think long and hard about that little, short little dump off pass after that timeout or whatever that stoppage of time on that 4th and 1 play. It was just too much in that fourth quarter, and then just getting the crap kicked out of them in Georgia that I think just kind of did them in, because you were not going to get from 17 to 10 in 2 weeks, regardless of how well you played against A&M or what you did against Arkansas. So I think the Georgia loss, the Florida loss was not great. That may be what the committee says, but the committee didn't drop them 7 spots after that Florida loss. They did after Georgia. And I think that's going to, in the end, be what hurt them. But I just mentioned it. You wrote about it a couple days ago on statesman.com. Go ahead and check out our content. There's been a lot of talk. Hey, if Texas ends up getting punished for having 3 losses, with one of those losses being Ohio State, should they quit scheduling these marquee games to begin the season? Texas has Ohio State and Michigan coming to town the next 2 seasons, then home and Notre Dame. Those are obviously great for TV, great for fans, great for the piggy bank, but they kind of put you behind the 8 ball if you lose those games. So, we'll start with you since you wrote about it. Should Texas seriously consider not scheduling these marquee games that we love in non-conference play?
Yeah, they should. And I know it's pleasing to the early season eye. It's nice to have a sexy matchup in late August, early September. But when you got to play this gauntlet of a schedule every year, and I'm not saying they're playing the big dogs in the SEC every year, but it is a big dog pound, the SEC, unlike the Big Ten, which is kind of top heavy. So I would say, yeah, I called Chris Del Conte Sunday morning to ask, are you canceling those games? And he was like, you really think I'm going to comment on that right now? I'm not talking about that. And so he said he'll talk to me about it after the championship weekend comes out. I just, I as a college football fan, I love the fact that they do it, but I don't think it's in their best interests, because it's all about 10-2 or 11-1. A 9-3 team has never gotten in an at-large bid, and until they expand it, it's still going to be that way. So, and I know Ohio State still schedules big dogs. They've got a home and home at Alabama coming up, but Ohio State doesn't play in the SEC. And I give props to the Big Ten. Nobody's scared. Oregon, Ohio State, and Indiana, and everybody else, whatever. So I think that it would be in Texas's best interest to consider bringing in a weaker sister for that third game, and if they can do it, sticking it in mid-November when guys are getting beat up, because it's just a real gauntlet.
What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. I mean, you can't. The way the NCAA has structured this playoff, and the fact that you have a selection committee determining who gets in the playoff, which is the most ridiculous thing of any sport at any level. I don't know why the NCAA has these selection committees. It makes sense in basketball and other sports because there's 64 teams in the tournament. In football, these non-conference games shouldn't be played as long as they're part of the equation determining who gets in the playoffs. They just shouldn't. Until these conferences divide themselves into divisions, because they're massive conferences, until you play every team in your division every year, and until the division winner or second place or whoever is guaranteed a spot in the playoff, don't play these non-conferences. Until these non-con games are treated like, let's use a high school comparison, it's like a non-district game. It has no impact on if you get in the playoffs or not. It helps make you better down the road by playing good teams, and it could help you seeding-wise in an eventual playoff, but it shouldn't have any impact whether you get in the playoffs or not. That should be determined by conference games only, in my opinion. But that's not how things are set up right now. Hopefully in the future it is. Until it is, you can't play these games because it will hurt your chances of competing for a national championship.
Mind it if the team that Texas is replacing Ohio State with is, something fun for the fans, whether it's a Tech or a TCU or a Baylor, one of these in-state schools. But the fact of the matter is,
That's not Tech, not the way they're playing. No.
the fact of the matter is, Texas has to replace, if Texas cancels Ohio State, they have to replace with a Power 4 school. And this is, these Power 4 schools aren't just jokes. I mean, sure, you can find maybe a Rutgers or some, garbage team, but those teams chances are probably going to hold you over the barrel for guaranteed money to come in and play your game. This is a different era. This is the NIL. This is the revenue sharing era. Texas can't really afford to give up those games and be paying $3 million for some school to come in and possibly beat Texas. If you're scared about losing to Florida, you can lose to one of these Power 4 schools, and that would definitely doom you. And I don't know. I just want to
Daniel. You're saying they can't schedule Savannah State?
No, they can't. You have SEC rules mandate that you must play one Power 4 team. So Texas, like next season, for example, they have Texas State, they have UTSA. Those are your two non-Power 4 schools and your non-conference schools. So if you cancel Ohio State, you have to go find some Power 4 school that does not have a game, which is probably pretty hard, this far out of the 2026 season. And, if that school that happens to have a game, they aren't coming here for $50,000, $500,000. They know the predicament Texas is in. They're probably going to hold them over the barrel, demand $2-3 million or whatever. And in this era where you're trying to make revenue sharing and you're crying poverty and all that stuff, I just don't think that's a very financially responsible thing. And I'm also just from the perspective that Steve Sarkisian gets paid $11 million to beat Ohio State. He gets paid. These players are making a lot of money to show up in these big game and compete, and that's part of the deal. It's part of the deal of going to the University of Texas is to play the Ohio States, play these tough games, then beat Florida during the regular season. It sucks. It kind of went the wrong way. That's also part of the deal at the University of Texas. So I don't feel as bad for Steve in the Texas football program as he was trying to get that sympathy on his media rounds. I understand that it's not ideal to open up the season against Ohio State, but that's also part of the deal about being part of Texas. And I would also, as much as Steve is upset, I'd also love to see him go into the ESPN offices and say that this game's getting canceled, because I have a feeling that conversation may not go as well with the ESPN execs as it did on the Paul Feinbaum show. But that's just my personal guess about that. But it's a sticky situation. I understand the complaints, but you're Texas. You're big, you're bad, you're Texas. Put on the big boy pants and go play Ohio State. That's just kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, to your point, there could be an interesting bidding war. Like certain teams want to play. I want to play my Rutgers or Boston College or Northwestern. I want to avoid the Michigans, the Ohio States, the Clemsons, whoever. There's not that many weak sisters in the power conferences, and some of these schools could be becoming a bidding war to get them to come visit.
Cause Sparty.
I'd also imagine some of the schools that Texas calls aren't coming unless Texas agrees to go there. Yeah. And your fans may stomach a trip to Ohio State because it's going to Ohio State. But are you as your fans who you're also demanding money from to help pay fill the NIL and revenue sharing piggy bank? Are they going to be get those checkbooks and they're being forced to go to Rutgers, or they're being forced to go to Michigan State as opposed to Michigan? So
I don't think it's Cincinnati.
Yeah, I don't think it's as simple as saying we're going to cancel Ohio State. You have to figure out where you're going else to fill that spot. You can't just fill it with a Texas Southern or with these small Texas schools. It has to be a Power 4 school, and that's just I don't know. Go play Ohio State. Figure it out later, and then don't lose to Florida or lose by 25 to Georgia later in the season. But that's just my personal opinion on it. And that's going to do it for us. We have to head on down to campus a little bit to talk to Steve. Talk to Steve about this. Talk to Steve about the recruiting class, because today is signing day, kind of lost in the shuffle with all this college football news. Thomas and said, I believe, will be at Moody Center later tonight for Texas and Virginia men's basketball. The women play tomorrow at Moody Center against UNC. So lots of stuff happening on campus. We'll be back on Sunday to talk to you about Texas not making the playoffs and their whatever bowl game they end up getting to. We believe it's probably the Citrus Bowl, but statesman.com. Thanks for reading our work. Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Check us out, all the stuff, newsletters, On Second Thought podcast. A lot of stuff. I'm rambling. We're leaving. Deuces.